have you talk about that next.
Yeah, it's so I had to recognize like when I was at the point of didn't feel like myself anymore, and I wasn't doing things that made me happy and that I felt good about. I really had to come to that point of like self awareness and knowing that I needed to
make a change.
Yeah, and put the brakes on for a couple things. And
isn't that scary though? I mean,
yeah, right? Because college, you're supposed to be able to do it all. No, I mean, so I'm the kind of person, I don't say no. I'm going to say I can do it all until I really can't, until I'm feeling like I'm so overwhelmed that I'm just crumbling and so stressed out that I'm panicking and crying and things like that. So I really had to come to the point.
So you go until you crash.
Yeah, I'm that type of person, unfortunately.
Yeah.
And it's gone a lot better. So I always use the example, I came in my first year, and that summer, since I was local, I thought, okay, I'll take classes, I'll work, I took classes from like 9 in the morning till like 1 in the afternoon. And then I would go to one job from like 2 to 6. And then I'd go to the next job like 3 or 4 days a week from 7, work all the way through, or 11 p.m. and work all the way through the night, and then get up and do that. And it wasn't until I was so burnt out, I literally was driving home one night from working all night and trying to get to class that next morning. I was falling asleep driving that I realized, and I actually ended up I ran into like a guardrail on my tire. I like had the like, oh my gosh, like I can't do this. And I was literally on the side of the road having a moment and feeling like my world was coming down, and I just realizing I couldn't do it all. And I think for me, since that summer, I had to learn, my mom calls it the art of saying no.
Right.
And the art of knowing your limits. So I thought, because I'm a pre-health student, that time it was, that I had to check every box immediately. But I learned very quickly that most successful people don't actually check all the boxes. So I don't need to get clinical hours and take, 15, 18 credit hours. I don't have to do it all at once.
Yeah. Pre-med is intense.
Yeah.
And then you're surrounded by other intense people, and they're saying, oh, I'm doing this. Oh, I'm doing that.
Yeah. And there's a culture sometimes, especially in college students, of like, oh, I haven't had sleep. Have you had any sleep? Oh, you got 2 hours. You got so much sleep.
It's war stories.
Yeah,
Who's tougher?
Yeah. And that's not healthy, right? So we know, I need, personally, to function, I need at least like 7 to 8 hours of sleep a night, right?
I just heard it's 10 is ideal. That made me feel better because I like 10. So I was like, oh, look at me.
So, I mean, I knew what I needed, but I was pushing myself because I thought I could do it all, and I thought I could juggle it all. And I realized that it's okay to take a gap year and get those hours, or it's okay to not do it all at once and be like this great conqueror. And I think that's something for me, being a first-gen student, I had felt like if I didn't do it in 4 years and I didn't do it perfect, I was letting down like my family back home. And I wasn't living up to their expectation of checking the box of stability and making money and things like that.
Yeah, because I have to be a doctor.
Yeah, exactly.
Why are you crying? What are you
it's just
crying
really,
about?
I don't like to talk about it. I openly talk about it, but I just...
So Morgan's very emotional, and she's going to talk about what's making her emotional.
Yeah, I mean, I think that, learning for me that I didn't have to do it all at once was really important, and something that your family might not always get. Coming to college and being a first-gen student, your parents don't really know what your life looks like, right? So my parents didn't understand, like, what kind of classes, what does it mean to be a college student, and why can't you work 20 hours a week and send money home? Like,
yeah, so, you can't say I'm tired because
like things
we're tired too.
Yeah, exactly. So, and that's just the way, like the culture is where I grew up in my family, you do what you have to do until you can't.
So was it hard for you to tell them?
Yeah, totally.
Stop?
I had to have multiple conversations with advisors and friends about, even like when I wanted to talk about that conversation of, I don't want to be a doctor. It's not what I want to do with my life. I'm miserable. And trying to explain to them like what I even what I'm doing now and like my future job, like what that even means. Like they don't, they know I like have a job, but they don't know like
what career path.
Because it doesn't necessarily fit their perceptions of like careers you can picture, right? You can picture a lawyer going into, the courtroom, but you can't really picture someone doing like health promotion or data, things like that. So it was really hard. I mean, I felt like I disappointed them, to be honest. I mean, I felt like, there's this, they'd given me so much. The least I could do was just suck it up and, do what I need to do. But I just knew in my heart that that wasn't for me. And I would be hurting myself and hurting them in the long run if I was miserable. So
yeah, they don't want you running into guardrails. Yeah,
I mean, and that's what I was uncomfortable with that, talking about it at first. But like, so my dad came that day, tell me replace my tire, and he was like, "What happened?" Like, he had no idea that I was feeling so overwhelmed. And when I finally told him, he was like, "Oh my God, like, it's okay. Like, don't feel like you have to take on the world for us. Like, we want you to be happy doing whatever you're doing,
Because they probably saw it just as being supportive.
Yeah, exactly.
They didn't see it as, we're putting Morgan in a situation that's putting her at risk.
Yeah, exactly. And they don't see me enough to know the difference. You know what I mean? They weren't seeing me on a daily basis to know. Like, I could bluff my way through a phone call and say, I'm fine. I'm doing okay. I've had no sleep, and I don't know the last time I've eaten, but I'm okay.
Like, ha ha ha.
Yeah.
They probably didn't take it seriously.
Yeah, exactly. So I think I really had to hit my vulnerable point of being like honest with my parents about that. And I feel like most people, when you have that open conversation, are receptive to it. It's just making that initial contact is really difficult for me, just because I felt like I was letting them down. But
because what plays in with regard to failure is,
so I think for me, I carried the weight of like, I want to set my parents up for like, I got into college, I'm here. I want to make sure that they don't have to work the rest of their lives, or that my mom doesn't have to like clean house, or do whatever she's, do these kind of like multiple minimum wage jobs
that are hard on her body.
Yeah, exactly. Because I hear, my dad's like, he drives a truck. So he drives for 12 hours a day and then comes home and has no like I don't want them to have to do that forever. So I took on the burden myself of having to kind of try to make a path for our family, which doing alone is really difficult. And
as an 18-year-old?
Yeah, and when you're still trying to figure out yourself and carrying the weight of everyone else at the same time. And, I wanted to make sure my dad had health insurance, right?
Right.
So, I mean, at one point we were talking about he needed glasses, like these special pair of glasses, and they were going to cost us like some absurd amount, like $700, something like that. And it was just like, well, how are we going to afford that? Like, there's no insurance to cover,
Yeah.
And so it was just like, I had to pick up more work, because I felt like he never explicitly asked me, but I felt like what I needed to do to support my family is I needed to make sure that he had,
so he could see.
Yeah. So he could see the drive, and so things like that, I think, but I don't know. It's taken some perspective for me to realize like the value in knowing myself and knowing my limitations and being okay with the situation.
Like protecting yourself.
Yeah, exactly.
Do you think it's like protecting your mind?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I would definitely say it's protecting my mind. I mean, because what good am I to my parents and my family if I
are all stressed out?
Yeah, if I'm stressed out and I'm not enjoying, I could work all my life and never spend any time with them. And they might have, great health care. I might, if I was a doctor, I might be able to provide them. But if I'm not actually like spending time and enjoying their company and things like that, then I've missed the point, right? I've missed the point of family. So I don't know. It took a really long time for me to realize like my limitations and being able to say no to things, but it's really important.
Yeah, and I think I see it all the time where you did everything in high school. So you got here at NC State.
Yeah.
It's like, well, I'm going to do everything at NC State, which is a Research One institution, nationally ranked.
Yeah.
It's just a really tough university. And it's like, no, you don't have to be a hero.
Yeah.
Like, you can ask for help. Because I don't think you asked for help.
Oh, well, I don't think I knew you at that point.
Mm-hmm.
I was with Lori at that point. Lori was my academic advisor at that point. And so her and I had some pretty deep
good
moments in her office where I like literally like flung the door open and I was like, I can't do this. I'm tired. I like literally bawled because how do I have this conversation with my parents that I don't want to do this? I don't want to be, go to med school, things like that.
Yeah, no, I'm glad. And I hope other people use that as a safe place where you can kind of air out your confusion.
Yeah.
It's like, this is what I'm feeling, but I don't even know what it means.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. So, so when you cut things out, then you got into student government.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
So tell me about Morgan trying to do everything, Morgan's life, and then Morgan's life after you had some healthy boundaries.
So once I figured out what made me happy to do and what I enjoyed doing, I was able to spend my time doing things that I felt contributed, but that made me happy and that I enjoyed. So like once I cut out a lot of the crazy, like work hours and trying to take too many classes at once and things like that, I was able to like get involved with things I really enjoyed and get to know people who weren't just like the typical like pre-health like kind of mindset and
like a more diverse.
Yeah, and I think it made me a better person because it made me like understand who I was and what I wanted and being able to bounce ideas and passions of what I wanted to do for a career off people who weren't the same as me was really important. And then I got to talking about stuff I was passionate about, right? So like I had this aha moment, like I love talking about policy and like, how do we make these changes and how do we talk about access and things like that. But I couldn't have that until I learned to give up things and prioritize what was really important and what was going to teach me more, right? Yeah.
So you had the same resources, like cutting out some work hours, cutting out some classes. You still graduated on time.
Yeah.
Your family was still okay.
Yeah, I mean, I think sometimes, we hear about students and you hear about their progress throughout, but then you don't hear what happens afterwards, right? So I graduated, I made it. I went, and then we talked about earlier in high school, I was so used to being like the A+ student, I had to come to NC State and accept that I might not always be the A+ student and I'm going to be challenged a little bit more. And that's okay. Like if I don't always do so great, you know what I mean? All the time.
Because you also went to national conferences. Was that with Pre-Health Club? Or what club was that with?
I went with HOSA, which is Health Occupation Students, which is a smaller version of like a pre-health club.
But that's the thing, is I could see if you were doing your crazy work hours, you would have said, I can't take off for a conference.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And so the amount of students who are saying, oh, I can't do that because I've got to work, which I understand that. But you were able to do it. And what do you think mattered more?
Yeah, I mean, I think that when I cut out the things that weren't important and weren't giving back to me, that I was able to go to these amazing conferences and experience, go and meet people and network and have these amazing sessions about like things that I'm passionate about and be around students that like fueled the flame for what I wanted to do and what I was passionate about. I think that was definitely a catalyst for where I am now, to say the least.
Right. So those experiences got you the job.
Yeah.
More so than working 7 to 11, 4 days a week.
I have no formal training, I have no formal education, I should say, in public health, right? So I took like one global public health class, which was great. I learned a lot. So I have no background in that area, but yet because I cut out some of this kind of craziness, I was able to take on an experience that when I went into an interview, because I went through like a phone interview, I went through like a Skype interview, I was really able to bring that kind of up, because no one wants to hear about how I worked like 12 hours and I made it. Like, that's great, but that's not a teaching moment. That doesn't show I learned anything or how I work on the job. And so because of that, I was able to use my experiences and translate that into a job. So I was really confused when I came out of, college. I thought, what the heck I want to do public health, but I have a background in nutrition. How is this going to cross over? They're kind of related. They're not exactly related.
So you got a job that wasn't your major because of the other experiences you had.
Yeah.
So you can be in a career and not necessarily have the specific major.
Yep.
It's all the other things you can do to prepare yourself for a job.
Yeah, exactly. And I think like when throughout the hiring process, they were more interested to hear like what I had learned and what skills I could contribute versus I made an A in this class, or I, worked at the hospital. That's great, but if I never learned anything
how upset were you when you got like a bad grade, like say in Bio 212 or Chem 223?
I was okay. I'm gonna be honest. I'm mediocre at best. I'm not like the greatest.
But see,
I'm not the greatest student. I barely, and when I say barely, like I was calculating what I needed to make, like to pass, like anatomy, organic chemistry, stuff that I like hated, but I had to do.
And you got into graduate school.
I did get in.
And got a job.
I did get in. Yeah. So I barely made it. So
and was offered a job and was invited to graduate school. Okay.
I mean, so like, especially if students are thinking about going the grad school route. So yes, I didn't have the grades, but like I had to advocate for myself. So at one point when I was talking with, like Virginia Tech, for instance, they were asking, she was like, well, why don't, your grades are really not so great. We really wouldn't accept you, to be honest. And I said, okay. So I literally sent her, I didn't take that as the final answer. I literally sent the person who was like the committee's mate, I sent them like a 3-page email of why I was the hardest working, why I deserve to be there, why I'm going to benefit from the program. And me taking the time to do that and show that I wanted to be there got me an acceptance letter.
Yeah, that goes back to, did you get the answer you wanted?
Yeah.
Nope, you didn't get the answer you wanted. So you advocated for yourself.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's really important to, like, I know my limitations, so I know that, like, I didn't do great in anatomy or organic chemistry or, things like that.
But you thought it was the end of the world.
I did. I thought, oh, my God, I can't get into med school. I can't do anything with my life. I'm going to have to move back home. I'm going to be a failure. No. You just have to learn how to talk. All people want to know from that experience is what you learned from it and how you can apply that to what you're doing now, right? So it taught me the preservation and the persistence to kind of keep moving forward. And when I emailed the professor at Virginia Tech, she immediately saw that coming through to my email, because I'm not the type of student that was going to give up, or I was going to push her, research to the next level, because I would dedicate the time to do it, because I really wanted to be there. So
I mean, I forgot the quote, but it's okay. So nationally, first generation students and like who are first generation low income, only 10% of them graduate with a bachelor's degree. But so that's 10%. So that means you're in the top 10%. That's elite. You're an Olympic athlete. It is. I mean, that's the elite part of it. But when you look up the percentage of people who attempt to climb Mount Everest and reach Mount Everest, it's in the 30s, 40%. So it's like you've overcome the odds greater than climbing Mount Everest.
Yeah.
I mean, you need to, and I'm glad you basically let her know that.
Yeah. And I think, and that was important. Like, I didn't know how to, like, say in an email without sounding, like, or in a phone call without sounding odd, or, like, to, that I, like, how to advocate for myself and how to talk about it without sounding, like, too proud or,
like you're wrong.
Yeah, or things like that. Like, so I really had to have that conversation of how to professionally, like, talk about the skills I do have. Like, so I know I can do X, Y, and Z. I know I'm going to be the hardest working because I want to be there. And so I like looked up her bio. I looked up Virginia Tech's, like all their, grad school stuff. I could quote it because I knew I wanted to be there. And I emphasized that when I was applying, and in that email with the professor.
Mm-hmm. No, that's great. It's what you want to do and then go for it.
Yeah.
And that's the piece where passion outweighs, say, a GPA.
Yeah.
Because you can't teach passion.
Mm-hmm.
You can, obviously, you get a grade when you're 18 years old in an undergrad class. That does not mean what grades you're going to get in graduate school.
Yeah.
But with that passion, it's like, yeah, you're going to take that program, that professor's research to the next level.
Yeah.
A B+ isn't going to take,
Yeah, exactly.
It's like, you know how to study, you take a test well.
So that's why,
Okay.
so I had mediocre grades. I didn't do that well on the GRE. So I really didn't have, like, on paper much going for me besides, like, my experiences and the fact that I really wanted to be there.
Right.
I just had to know how to talk myself up and how to professionally advocate for myself.
Right.
In that sense.
Right. And so that's what you're saying is that decision making of balancing, I need housing and food, but I also need to invest in my career.
Yeah.
So there's that balance. Like, you don't go all focusing on money. You figure out, okay, what can I get away with?
Yeah,
exactly. So that I can do these other things, because the time and effort you spent on those other things led you to a job, $40,000 the next year, $50,000 the next year. So it's the time you spent in that gave you tons more money than working another 5 hours a week at a barely minimum wage job.
Yeah, definitely.
So it's like seeing the long-term investment.
Yeah. And I think, I just had to prioritize. I could work X amount of hours and do that, crazy work schedule, but I could only work, 20 hours versus working 45 hours. And I might not be able, I might have to skim by on a couple things, and I might have to pull some of my resources together and know, my limits a little bit more, but I could do it and have the time to do other things, So,
Well, what we're not going to talk about is how you got a dog your senior year. We'll save that for another time, Morgan. But thanks for coming by. Is there anything else you wanted to say?
I think so.
Okay, this was great.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks.
TRIO Student Support Services Program and Student Support Services STEM are federally funded college retention and completion programs. These programs focus on academic, personal, and career support for under-resourced undergraduate students. At TRIO SSS and SSS STEM, our goal is helping our students reach their goals. We are currently accepting new students to our program. Apply today. Go to www.ncsu.edu to learn more about student support services at NC State.